Hi, I'm Rebecca and I'm a sports nutritionist, and today we're going to be doing a Q&A on a lot of different topics. We'll be talking about pre-match, during match, post-match, and lots of other questions around nutrition and sport.
First question that I had quite a few times was around the timings of eating and what to do when preparing for a match or workout, if there was a particular ideal, I guess, of scheduling meals, particularly at the younger age group, or the under 10 age group for competition.
Yeah, so before a competition or before a workout, we ideally want to be eating our last main meal 3 or 4 hours before we play. It just gives our food a lot of time to digest. Obviously, digesting food takes energy as well, so it just gives us time for our bodies to digest the food and for us to sort of replenish these fuel stores before we go and play. So if a player is playing at 10 a.m., this might be at 7 a.m. So we have our last main meal then, about an hour before we go on the court, or for some of our older players, maybe before we start warming up in that last half an hour. We want a little bit of a carb top up. So that's just a small snack. It could be something like a banana, an oat bar, handful of jelly babies, something like that. That's just going to increase our blood sugar, and that our muscles can use that sugar use that energy for warming up and for preparation of our match. And then for every hour that we play, we want to be having one snack. So this could look like, again, oat bar, fruit, dried fruit, sweets, things like that. Just easily digestible carbohydrates, things are going to give us that quick hit of sugar.
That's good. So that's, I guess, another thing to be prepared for is if you're going out to a tournament, is to have a bag of snacks or in their tennis bag so that they can monitor that as you go. So that's quite interesting to eat during the play. I think people forget that it kind of continues into the workout as well, rather than just about the meal plan during the breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah, it's definitely being prepared. Obviously, with tennis, it's so unpredictable. If you look at fueling somebody for the marathon at the weekend, something like that, you have direct points where you need to fuel because you know how long the race is. With tennis, you don't know how long it's going to be, so it's really important that we get the fueling right, and that's that main meal before, an hour before. Just top up those energy stores a little bit more based on the energy that you've used in the morning, and then fueling throughout. So it's really important that players come prepared, because you don't know if a match will last 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. We're going to need enough snacks to last us through.
So true. And another question we got about match days in particular was, what about if you're almost too nervous to eat, or if you're refusing to eat?
Yeah, so for players who are playing, it's very common. I think the first thing is really important to touch on is habits. A lot of players, if they see success and if they're achieving really good things, but they're not eating and drinking, they might attribute that to their success. It's really important to sort of break down this habit. And this comes down to basically practice. I think it's really important for players to practice their feelings during training. So if they've got a training session that's an hour, it's a 2 hour, practice eating during that, practice having something that half an hour before, and just get used to it in the routine. So when it comes to competition, it's just a natural thing. It's like brushing their teeth in the morning, it's like getting dressed. It becomes part of that routine, so it's not such a big thing when they go to competition. The second thing I think as well is understanding the what and the why of food. A lot of nutrition comes down to education, and this is what we like to talk about, and what we're doing in this presentation is making sure the player knows why they're eating what they're eating. It's not a banana because they have to eat. It's a banana because that directly links to their performance, that directly links to increasing their fuel, increasing their energy, and they use that energy directly, and that's going to help them physically, it's going to help them mentally. When it comes to concentration, things like that, we see a direct correlation between eating carbohydrates during tennis and a benefit in their performance. So I think it's really important to make sure the players know why they're eating it. And finally, I think just starting small, it doesn't need to be, some players will find eating really easy, some are going to really struggle. So start with the small things, focus on what they like. Again, you don't really need to start the small stuff when it comes to this. Focus on sipping a smoothie, having a few sweets, anything that they like, just to help them get into that habit, and then we can sort of iron out the fine details later on.
And we had a lot of questions about Lucozades, Gatorades, those types of, I guess, energy drinks, whether you could recommend those for matches or workouts, or whether they're a no.
Yeah. So Lucozades are really good quick release of carbs. So one bottle gives you something like 30 grams of carbohydrates, which is sort of comparable to something like a Nature Valley oat bar, a Belvita bar, 3 draft cakes, handfuls of jelly babies, dried fruit, and a banana. So there's many different ways that we can get our carbohydrates and our energy while we're playing. Lucozade obviously is in a liquid form, which might benefit some other players. Benefit of Lucozade as well is that it contains electrolytes. So if we have a really intense match and we're sweating a lot, we're losing a lot of salt through our sweat, it's going to help us replace those, and it's going to help us stay hydrated on the court. So the only downfall of Lucozade obviously is that it's got a lot of added sugar and sweetness, and that's not great for our sort of dental hygiene. So if it's for a younger player, I'd say they probably aren't playing at the intensity that they're going to be using to replace these electrolytes, and they're going to be using different ways to ingest carbohydrates. They also probably don't need to be having that much sugar. So I'd say for older players, it might be more beneficial, especially if they're sweating a lot on the court, if they're playing a lot, and say they're into that third hour of playing. They've already sort of had two physical food forms. So they've had an oat bar, they've had cake, they've had a banana, and they're struggling to eat any more without feeling full. So Lucozade is a great option to hydrate and get that carb hit. But obviously making sure that we drink water after Lucozade just to clear out our mouth for the sugar kind of thing.
Yeah. And do you think in terms of like the carbonated versions or the non-carbonated versions, I'm sure most are probably drinking the still versions because I can't imagine it's very comfortable with almost a fizzy drink. But in terms of the content, I guess it's everybody should just look at, as you say, the sugar levels of both.
Yeah, and especially the carbohydrate content. A lot of these foods will contain, and lots of these snacks and the drinks will contain different levels of carbohydrates. So even something's labelled as a sports drink, some will contain 30 grams, some will contain 15 grams. And if you're using it for performance, I'd be looking at something that is going to give you 20 to 30 grams. Okay. You also need to be aware of, I guess, serving size when it comes to drink. A lot of these serving sizes are actually half a bottle. That doesn't mean that you definitely need to drink half a bottle, but it's just being aware when you're reading that nutritional label, making sure that you're getting the most information out of it.
Okay. And that, I guess, leads on to the next question that we had that somebody sent in, which was about chocolate powder and whether Nesquik is acceptable. They commented that they automatically go for a sugar-free version if actually the calories from the sugar were part of the recovery process, or whether Nesquik is actually any good for them. So I'm assuming they're just mixing it as almost like a post-workout or supplement drink.
Well, calories are definitely part of our recovery, and they're part of our energy balance. So our calories in versus our calories out. And for children and juniors, we do definitely aim for a slight positive energy balance, so eating a little bit more than we're expending. And that's just because children are growing, they're maturing, and that requires a lot of energy from the body. So we want to make sure that we've got enough energy to support that. We also need to think, when you think about what we're eating after tennis, we need to be thinking about our carbohydrates and replenishing those stores. Obviously, sugar is a carbohydrate, so it is a way of replenishing those energy stores and refueling after we play. Sugar is a simple carbohydrate, so it's broken down in the body really quickly, which is great when we're playing tennis. It's not so great generally throughout the day, because that's just going to cause our blood sugar to peak and crash after, which obviously we don't want on the wrong court. So I think there's definitely different uses and different needs for things like sugar, especially when we look at children and looking again at like sort of dental hygiene, making sure they're not having too many sugary drinks, and if they are, making sure that we drink water after them. But sugar and chocolate definitely have their place in a healthy diet. It's all about moderation and what the player's done that day, what they're doing the next day, and also convenience. Chocolate milk is a great option for recovery. It's protein and it's carbohydrate, so it's going to start that refuel and repair process really quickly. It's just making sure that, again, we have it in moderation and it makes up a healthy diet full of lots of different other things.
Yeah, and that was one of their concerns, was the dental part of it and the dental hygiene part, and you know, you think you're doing good by doing something, but actually it can counterbalance. Also, is the loss of energy towards the end of a long match. Have you got any tips of how people can keep their energy going when the match goes longer?
Yeah, so if you're losing energy, particularly at the end of the match, it can come down to two things. It can come down to sort of feeling before or feeling during. So as we were talking about, remembering to eat during, making sure you've got enough snacks, enough options to keep you full throughout. Tennis is unpredictable, so really we want to be starting that match with as much fuel and as much energy as we can. So really topping up those carbohydrate stores. If we don't use all of that energy, that's completely okay. That just changes our refuel. So we might not have as much carbohydrate in the evening because we've not used that much carbohydrates. But it's really important that we get that pre-bit sort of sorted before. And that's a sort of unique thing about tennis, and that's why players have to think a little bit differently about their nutrition compared to other sports like football or hockey or running, when there's that time limit on it. So again, we want to be starting that fuel up process probably even the night before, and especially the day before that we play tennis. And that's a good 3 meals a day, very high in carbohydrate, a nice high carbohydrate meal the night before play. And that means that we wake up with our fuel tank already full. We don't need to be thinking about too much about the necessities of breakfast. Obviously, breakfast is really important, and that's we use breakfast as the top up, not necessarily that first meal to top up all our stores. And then we can start the process there. So I think if people are losing energy during the match, definitely have a look at the day before and see different ways that you can introduce carbohydrate into the day before, just to make sure that anything you do on the day is additional and topping up those stores, and you're not necessarily completely relying on it.
I think that's so true about starting early, because I think almost you're in a deficit before you've even got on the match court. So if you're already low on energy and haven't prepared that night before, even hydration, if you're in a hot country or not familiar with where to eat, where to go, all of those can have such a knock-on effect in just the length that, into the match and how you're faring.
Yeah, absolutely. Preparation is a big part of it, and it comes down to that unpredictability and finding ways to get that little bit of extra energy in, particularly if players are nervous and struggling to eat. We do things like breakfast boosters, which are just easy ways to get carbs in the morning of. So that could be an extra drizzle of honey on porridge, a glass of orange juice with your cereal, some extra berries, things like that. Just really easy ways to up that energy, up the carb intake. And that can also start the night before, an extra portion of pasta, and making sure that we're eating sort of extra sandwiches or white bread at lunch, things like that. Things that have a really good carbohydrate content, that being aware of those swaps and being aware of the preparation.
And in terms of, as you're saying, if you've got back-to-back matches, I guess that post-recovery after that match, you almost want to start eating, refueling, I would assume, straight away? Or is there any length of waiting in between?
No, absolutely. If you're playing a second match, the fueling that you do during your first match is even more important. It's going to be difficult to really digest a big meal after your match if you're playing in an hour or playing in 2 hours. Or for a lot of people, they don't know when their next match is.
Right.
And again, it's that unpredictability of a day at competition at tennis. There's a lot of challenges around eating, and it's really important. If we do have a second match, we don't know when it's going to be. We really focus on that fueling during that first match, and that our energy tank is not going to be at the bottom when we finish, and then we need to eat a big meal, because that's going to cause a stomach discomfort, and that's what we don't want on the match. So I'd say if you're playing a second match, you'd want to be probably eating maybe more regularly for your first match, or maybe using something like a glucose to help you get those carbs in without feeling that you're full. When you come off the court, if you can, and you've maybe got 2 hours before your next match, grabbing something really very low in fiber and really easy to digest, something like a chicken wrap, hummus and veg sandwich, white bread, these things that are really easy to digest and will give us that refuel really quickly. The thing with nutrition is that it doesn't need to be necessarily very complex and all of these very expensive products. Something as simple as a jam sandwich, it's giving you those carbohydrates, and it's a really easy thing. I think a lot of people can overcomplicate it, but as I said, it comes down to this education of knowing what the food is doing for your body and knowing when to eat it. So I definitely say if you're having multiple matches in a day, really focus on maximizing the amount that you can fuel during your match, just to make sure that fuel's topped up and you're not relying on having to eat a heavy meal perhaps when you don't feel like it.
And combining that, I guess, with the hydration, do you think stick to water in that post recovery session in between a workout or matches or traveling on to the next venue?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very individual again. I think if some players find eating on the competition day very easy. They've got a big appetite. They don't necessarily feel held back. They digest it very quickly. They don't feel bloated or anything like that. And other players are very susceptible to this sort of, I guess, digestive and the symptoms like this. So it is very dependent. I would say for somebody who is fine with eating solid foods, absolutely just stick to the water, making sure that we're sipping throughout the day, not not drinking for like an hour and then drinking halfway through, because obviously that
Yeah.
make us need to go to the bathroom a lot more, which is not really ideal
Yeah.
when we're playing.
Mm-hmm.
For somebody that's struggling to eat or has a game maybe an hour or 45 minutes after and doesn't really have the time to get anything down them, again, something like a smoothie would be really important.
Yeah.
You can get a lot of carbohydrates and protein in smoothies, which will help that recovery process and won't leave you feeling as bloated.
And in terms of smoothies, are you thinking homemade smoothies, shop bought smoothies? I know you just mentioned those.
Yeah. So this kind of comes down to, I guess, why and when they're eating it, sort of what the purpose of what they're eating it. Again, this doesn't need to be too overcomplicated, and convenience is definitely a big part of nutrition,
Right.
and especially for tennis players. So smoothies are a great source of fruit, veg, carbs, vitamins, and minerals, and they're really important for hydration. And this is regardless if they're shop bought or homemade. They make a really good pre-training snack or during match snack because they give us that top of energy. So something a shop bought smoothie, like Innocent, for example, that comes in a small carton, they're a really good source of carbohydrate, and they can give us the same amount of energy as something like an oat bar or a banana would. They're obviously just a different way of consuming that energy, kind of like you spoke about Lucozade. The other benefit of them, obviously, is that they're really easy and they're really quick to consume. They can be put in a packed lunchbox, they can be packed away, which just makes life a lot easier, especially when players are on the go. These smoothies will vary based on the brand, so it's really important to read the nutrition label, but they tend to not include that much protein. I guess the benefit of a homemade smoothie is that you can put whatever you want in it. So you can put in Greek yogurt, peanut butter, seeds, things like that, which is going to make it higher in protein, which might make it a more complete snack if you're having it after a match and you're focusing on that recovery part as well.
Okay.
When we combine protein and carbohydrate, we sort of amplify our recovery response and our refueling response, and we can basically store that carbohydrate a lot better. So shop bought smoothies are not bad, but if you're using them for recovery purposes, you might just need to pair them with peanut butter and rice cakes or a handful of nuts. It doesn't mean that they're all bad. And same with homemade smoothies. It just depends what you're using them for, and being aware of what that food is giving you and being aware of the benefits and why you're choosing the smoothie. But absolutely, don't sweat the small stuff. Smoothies are great, and they're a great way to stay hydrated and a great way to get fruit and veg and a bit of carbs in you.
And you mentioned nuts. I know they're talked about a lot in terms of being obviously hugely beneficial, but we've got a couple of junior players that are allergic to nuts and obviously have severe allergies, so that's not an option for them. And a lot of the times I feel like the dried fruit, they come in bags pre-made with nuts, or granola has nuts. There's so many foods that have been recommended but have nuts in them. Do you have alternatives or anything just as good, I guess, as having nuts?
Yeah, so nuts are just a really easy way to increase protein content, and again, very convenient for a lot of players. And that's why they're used a lot as a great snack or sort of a topper to meals. I myself have a nut allergy, so I know firsthand how tricky it can be to pick protein bars and to pick different cereals and to pick things that are, a lot of them are starting to contain traces of nuts. So they're definitely not essential. There's other ways that you can increase your protein. So for example, if we're looking at protein porridge in the morning or cereal, some people might add peanut butter. Someone with a nut allergy might add flax seeds, chia seeds. That's going to give us that extra protein hit without obviously being nuts. Same things like Greek yogurt, soy products, things like that. They're a really good source of protein without being nuts. When it comes to protein, we get a lot of it from our main meals. So when we have sort of chicken, fish, beans, pulses, nuts are more just an extra, but there's definitely other ways, as I said, focusing on things like milk, Greek yogurt, seeds, eggs, soy products, things that you can have as snacks, which are not so boiled eggs, things like that. It's definitely not the be all and end all, but also homemade things as well. When you combine them, make your own energy balls, make your own protein balls. There's a lot of ways to do it around, which without peanut butter or without nuts.
Oh, that's a good one. And a last question we had that somebody sent in on social media was about traveling abroad and packing their snacks. So again, if you've got allergies, obviously this is a huge one. But if you're just traveling to a new country, or even if you're just traveling to a new venue and you're not sure the sort of food and beverage offering, have you got any recommendations of how to keep hydration and nutrition the best?
Yeah, I definitely recommend players packing foods that they're used to. So foods that they know they can fuel with in that hour before and during. So those high carb snacks. So the energy bars they like, even if it's the sweets they like, really easy ways to get energy without eating a main meal, because obviously a lot of the supermarkets will differ. And I think especially when you're competing abroad, you kind of don't want to be messing with things you don't know. You want to keep that routine, and that helps build
Yeah.
those habits. So definitely packing a lot of snacks, and again that variety of snacks to help you be prepared for competition. And obviously, if we're competing in a hot country, we're using a lot more energy, so we are going to be needing to fuel more. So making sure that we have enough of that. And in terms of other options, I think it's really important if players struggle maybe with intolerances, maybe they're gluten intolerant, to bring oats or cereal that they can use themselves in the morning. If players don't know what the options will be abroad, bringing those sachets of porridge, they're a really good option to use, but they're a really good option also in the morning if you're not sure what you like. It's very versatile. And I think when we go abroad, there is a tendency for our overall nutrition to dip. We're not sure on certain foods, but I think the priorities of when we're going abroad is making sure that we've got the fuel. So if that means sort of 2 sachets in the morning for 3 days, that's all right. It's just making sure that we've got the fuel and making sure that we're preventing that dip in performance that we often see when we're abroad. Making sure that we stick to sort of bottled water if we're somewhere that we're not sure of, just to avoid any stomach upset. And the same with that, sort of washing fruit, making sure that we're very aware of hygiene during that time, and foods that we know and foods that don't cause us any discomfort.
Yeah, I think that's such a huge one, especially as the younger ones get on the road more and they travel more internationally. Like, it's such a topic that you don't think of. You just assume you're going to get there and you're going to like everything and everything will be open at the time that you want to eat, and it's just not always the case. And you can find yourself at the hotel, with no transport into the tennis club or wherever, and you're stuck. And I love the idea of those, the porridge sachets, or easy things like fruit bars and things like that, but the almost more substantial things to take.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well as we do have to have a lot of compromises when we go abroad, because those options aren't readily available. But packing what you know and what you like, cereal, if it's gluten-free bread, making sure that they will be able to accommodate you in whatever way, because some competitions are great abroad, some competitions are very lacking, and there'll be one option and there'll be one veggie option, and that'll be it. So just really easy ways to make sure that you're getting that fuel, you're starting that recovery process. For some of our older players, that might look like recovery shakes or protein powder, anything that you can bring just to start that process without relying on what the competition is bringing, because obviously you don't know about timing the routines as well, and it's really important that the players stay in control and stay with their own habits just to minimise the stress of everything else going on that day. You want your nutrition to be easy.